The MiG-21 in War Thunder isn't exactly famous for its BVR abilities. It was an interceptor designed in the 1950s, and it was pretty much designed for one thing: go fast and get fast quickly. Now, the Fishbed in War Thunder is indeed good at going very fast in straight lines, but the MiG-21 does see some sort of benefit from a turn fighter playstyle though. Nothing will stop War Thunder players from turning anything into a turn fighter. It can generally be played as an aggressive turn fighter against anything it can't run away from. Its relatively low weight and high power output will ensure that it can survive a duel with most aircraft that it faces. Fishbeds at battle ratings below 10.0 don't carry any particularly dangerous missile armament until the MF and SMT variants. The signature payload of these two aircraft is a quadruple mounting of the most agile missile for its BR. The R-60 is a missile that is completely impossible to dodge within range, note kinematically. But what if I told you we can swap out the R-60s for something that's equally, if not more, lethal? The R3R is probably something everybody's tried at least once, but never again. At first glance, it's really easy to see why, because it appears to be an exact copy of the R3S with only one caveat: it isn't fire and forget. And to be honest, that's exactly what it is. But being radar guided at a BR where radars are pretty weak across the board isn't actually the weakness you might think it is. In fact, it's actually its greatest strength. As outlandish as that sounds, it really is true, albeit complicated. It's not so much a physical, tangible advantage, like pulling more Gs or being lighter. The thing with the R3R is that it's more like psychological warfare. You're playing a MiG-21. Some people don't even know the Fishbeds get radars this early. And of course they've checked out the F100, F3H, F whatever below 10.0 on their team, make sure that they can't run into the R60M wielding 21 Biz. And so they confidently approach it, thinking all it can do is fire its GSH-23 squirt gun, but what actually happens is... Now, how you're generally going to be using the R3R is how you've seen it used so far in this video. It's at its highest lethality at high altitude, where the low drag of the thinner atmosphere allows it to rip across the sky way faster than most people expect. That's also inversely a disadvantage for the receiving party, since the thin air kills an aircraft's ability to change direction quickly. At this point, the R3R has about as easy a target as it could possibly hope for. Also, watch out for planes that can carry the AIM-9C, which is basically the R3R but American. If you see one up high with you, they're likely trying to do the exact same thing back to you. Now you might be asking, why would you even use these when you still have 30G missiles right there? Well, that 30G number is about the only attractive figure about the R60. At 10.3, you're going to have a really tough time trying to find a flareless target. The only planes lacking countermeasures are going to be the ones you find in a down tier. These include planes that are still fast enough to get away from you, like the F-104. It also includes planes that are not very good in the first place, like the F-4C. It also includes a Sabre. Yeah, I'm not kidding, there legitimately is just a completely vanilla Sabre sitting at 9.3. So using the R3R over the R60 will ultimately net you a wider range of potential targets, even if they are completely aware of you and have countermeasures. That takes me into the next point. At 10.3, SAR missiles are not at all a real prevalent threat. Some people will consequently refrain from even bringing chaff at all, as the only undodgeable missiles belong to the IR guidance category. So when they see a MiG-21 SMT or MF lining up behind them, they're gonna expect an R60, because why wouldn't they? They spot the red missile diamond, they make a gentle turn, and drop a single flare. But imagine their surprise when a supposed R60 doesn't even flinch and jams itself right up their exhaust pipe. Yeah, that's another thing with the R3R. Players have become so accustomed to their countermeasures that they don't even really bother to try and dodge the missile itself. Let's talk about how chaff comes into play. What flares are to the R60, chaff is to the R3R. Or, I guess, to the MiG-21's radar. People who are sentient and take chaff will more than likely very easily defeat the R3R if you launch it too early. A single dispense of chaff will throw off your radar lock entirely. So that's why I do recommend that you always wait to launch an R3R when you're at least within 3 kilometers. That way, even if they do have chaff and deploy it, the missile will have already traveled halfway to them before they've even reacted to it. Another drawback to consider with the R3R is that it's very difficult to use at low altitude, as you might have suspected. You can still use it down low, but you'll have the most trouble when your target is painted against the ground. It is a radar missile after all. So, to summarize, the Soviet SAR that no one ever seems to use is better than most people give it credit for. It doesn't have the most impressive stats on paper, but in practice it makes for a stealthy killer that no one expects. It can ignore flares, it can be used in all aspects, and it can even hit from 10 kilometers out. You can also even use it against aircraft that have sparrows, like the F-4C. Granted, the AIM-7D isn't the greatest missile in the game. I mean, most people would expect it to at least do its job better than an R3, right?